talking about tech, anybody here like big tech? Thank you. Right? I mean, that's the general feeling, and this is a fair cross-section of American public, and big tech is just bad. They're just bad to the core, and they not only censor conservatives, but they also are monopolies that crush competition. And so the question is, how do we deal with it? And one of the things the other side wants to do, and tech wants done, this is the tech answer, is to form a public utilities corporation. So what you have is, just like you have an electric utility or a cable utility, you would have a Facebook utility, you would have a search utility with Google. Well, who do you appoint? Well, the president appoints and the Senate confirms, and how do those people get on there? They get tons of contributions from Facebook and Google, and they give them to the president, and those corporations own that utility commission, whatever it's called. And so we have big government that oversees a really new part of our economy. The answer from my perspective is that we create competition at the grassroots level, and that competition rises and takes down these monopolies, so they're no longer monopolies. And what we have to do is we have to create those conditions, because right now, one of my friends on the Judiciary Committee, who is a very bright guy, but said something that is really stupid. He says, look, monopolies don't survive for more than 30 or 40 years. Who wants to try to win a presidential race as a Republican with Facebook and Twitter and Google taking you down for the next 30 or 40 years? We won't even be a party in 30 or 40 years if we allow that to happen. So we've got to find ways in a much shorter period of time to create this competition. Google, by the way, changed its algorithm in May of 2020 to disadvantage Donald Trump and to advantage Joe Biden. Changed its algorithm. And when you ask them about this, and I know people that own newspapers and ask them about it, they say, oh, well, that's just a technical thing. We don't know what the result was. We just know that a technical person did this. Nonsense. They chose the winner. They can move, the estimates are, they move 15 million votes. Because every time you ask for an article on Donald Trump, or every time you Google Donald Trump, and people here obviously Google in a more sophisticated way, but people out there, they're hearing about Donald Trump and they're wondering, Donald Trump, Hunter Biden. Okay, what are they going to get? They're going to get a story about the Ukrainian situation and Donald Trump's conversation. They're not going to get a story about Hunter Biden's using his dad's name for profit. So they change algorithms and they change public opinion. Facebook does the same thing. Twitter does the same thing. And what Amazon does in terms of crushing competition, terrible. So what we have to do is create, so 1996 Telecommunications Act. Newt Gingrich is the Speaker of the House. He didn't let something, but he may have let a few things kind of liberal go through, but this is something that was not liberal that went through. You get to take your cell phone number and you get to go from Verizon to AT&T. You take your cell phone number. You take your family pictures with you. You take your contact list with you. That creates competition because you no longer are stuck with one company. Oh, I don't really want to change companies. I could get a little better deal over here, but I'd have to call all my friends and tell them I have a new number, and I'd have to, figure out a way. So, bam, 1996 Telecommunications Act gave you the ability to take that information and move it. It's portable information. Both companies had to have a system that allowed you to make that portable. That's a government. That's the government saying, for consumers and for competition, we're going to do this. I don't like government stepping into the marketplace and dictating what's best. But in a situation like that, it opened up competition. It made price better and it made quality better for consumers. So what one of these bills would do is they would say, okay, Google, this data is your data and your data and your data. It's not Google's data. When you search, Google takes your search history and they sell that to advertisers. But that's not their data, that's your data. And so you can decide what you want to do with that data. You can take that information or data. Are we a data crowd or a data crowd? Tomato,
Not
right?
data.
You can take that information with you and you can go to Bing Now what happens in the marketplace? All of a sudden Bing says, well, wait a second, we could make $100 a month on this person's search history. They say, we'll offer you $50 if you come to Bing. They make a profit. You get money that you didn't get from Google. Or you can go to DuckDuckGo and say, you know what, I don't want anybody to know what I'm searching about. Bam! You are all of a sudden empowered with your data to make a consumer choice that opens up competition in the marketplace. During the Obama administration, when he ran, he was very successful using Facebook. And he brought in all these kids from Silicon Valley in his administration. Well, he brought them, one of the places he brought them was the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, that oversees mergers and acquisitions along with the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. And these kids, 750 mergers that high-tech engaged in, mergers and acquisitions. Not one of them was challenged. One of them was challenged in court. These kids just said, you know what, it's good for the marketplace. So what we do now is we say, okay, these companies, they will buy a company and put it on its shelf just so it doesn't compete against them. So what we've said is, for a limited time, you know, the time is going to be debated, but for a limited time, if you're Facebook, and you now have a history of buying WhatsApp, a history of buying Instagram, you now have to if the government sues and challenges that merger, you have to prove that it is pro-competitive instead of the government proving it's anti-competitive. So the burden just shifted. Now, it works for 10 years, it works for 5 years, whatever time period, but Facebook, you have to do this. And, you know, Google, you have to do it. Google bought YouTube, or merged with YouTube to keep others out of the marketplace. So these bills are a way of empowering consumers to get into the marketplace and to be able to create the kind of competition that we want to see. Why competition? Ken, you started out talking about censorship. You started out talking about an algorithm changing or Facebook deplatforming the president. Why competition? Nobody says in cable news that we don't have, that there is censorship, right? There's bias. MSNBC is biased on one side and Fox News is biased on another side, but we don't have censorship. So we have MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, we have all these different cable news shows. And you can go to any one of them and you can get a viewpoint. We have in the newspaper industry, we have Wall Street Journal, New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post. We have, again, enough competition that you don't get censorship. You get bias. You get what we all have and what we all want in the marketplace of ideas, and that's people coming in and taking a position and arguing and presenting facts and information to support that idea. So the marketplace of whether it's Facebook or anybody else, we want to have competition in that marketplace to reduce the censorship. So what if Twitter bans President Trump? If Parler was an equal number of users, in fact, the day after they banned President Trump, a ton of people started migrating over to Parler because there was competition. There wasn't enough competition, but there was competition. Then what happened? All three, Apple, Facebook, they shut down Amazon, because Amazon Web Services, they shut down Parler. Oh, but they didn't talk to each other. And they're not acting as you know, woke business people when they do that. They just happened to shut down Parler. Nonsense. They saw competition and they knew that they were next if they allowed this competition to exist, so they shut it down. So we've got to have competition in order to deal with censorship, not the other way around. There's people that say, oh, if we just you know, address Section 230, we'll address the censorship issue. You can't force a private corporation to speak or to allow speech the way you want it. I can't force you to have the same ideas that I have. Many of us do, because we all love Rick Santorum. but I can't force you to do that. And so the idea that we're going to have a government telling a private company or a public company, either way, a corporation like Facebook, this is what you have to do and these are the guidelines, We can take away immunity, we can take away Section 230, but we can't tell them what to do. But if we have different, if we have 5 Googles and 6 Facebooks and 7 Twitters, we all win. So that's what those antitrust bills are to me. We just had a 29-hour markup where we go through and consider amendments to bills. I needed the blood transfusion afterwards because I got beat up so bad. It was an ugly process. But anyway, that's what big tech is. Can I take some questions? Any questions on either one of those subjects?
Congressman, thank you. I think the biggest concern that most people seem to have is over privacy protection on data. What did the legislation do in this area, or what other thoughts do you have about trying to really help protect the privacy area?
So it's a great question, and there's really 2 kinds of privacy concerns that I hear about. One is China listening? Is Russia listening? Are they going to get my information and go in and wipe out my bank account? Do we have a foreign adversary that we are not securing our information against? And that's something that's of concern, because if we force these companies to be interoperable, all these companies operate in China and Russia and other countries, and are we going to give away the keys to our secret information? So that's something that before these bills become law, we want to make sure that our national security folks are on top of that and making sure that that's. The other issue is privacy with the U.S. government. I don't know about you, but I don't want them knowing what I'm doing, and that's why we live in a country that we live in, and privacy from my neighbor, or privacy from some business that's trying to get my information. And that really, I go back to competition in that sense, because I use DuckDuckGo, I don't use Google. And I got to tell you, folks, you may think you don't use Google, but you do use Google, because if you're not using Bing or DuckDuckGo, everything goes through Google one way or another. They're I give them credit for being, geniuses, but what they did was they said, well, we need to protect against cybersecurity. And so they wrote the regulations, they passed the regulations in the Obama administration, and guess what? They were the only ones that had the software to do it. So then all these other search engines said, oh, okay, we'll go through them, and they took all the information and they use it for advertising for the same purposes. So yes, but if we create competition, we address the issue, because there will be some search engines, there will be some parlors, there will be some other groups that stand up a private alternative to the advertising. So you can go to Bing and get $50 a month if you use Bing. You can go to DuckDuckGo and not get anything but keep your privacy. And a lot of us will look at that trade-off and say, I choose this.
I don't really like social media companies like Facebook or Twitter because of the deplatforming issue and silencing conservatives, but I hadn't heard what you said about Google, that they changed the algorithm and penalized President Trump. Can you talk more about that? Like, they flipped 15 million votes to Biden? Like,
well, what I've heard from sort of the academics on this issue is that by changing the algorithm, you can flip 15 million votes. You can influence 15 million people to move one direction or another in that situation.
But that happened.
But it absolutely happened. Absolutely, the algorithm happened. So you talk to people, at conservative publications, and what they'll tell you is the day after that algorithm went into effect, their readership went down. So if you were looking for something on the Washington Examiner or the Washington Times or the conservative newspapers in this area, you would have to go further down. You have to go to page 2 or 3 to find the story you were looking for, and that's what Google did, was by changing their algorithm. And it absolutely happened. We won't have a congressional investigation on it because the Dems control the House and the Senate. So we can't.
There's nothing you can do about it?
Nothing we can do about it. Well, we can do something when you give us.
How do we win if they can do that every election?
Well, because we will win. The people are so upset with boys playing girls sports and critical race theory and all the other things that are going on that we will win the majority, and we will hold hearings on this very issue in 2023. And that happens before the 2024 election.
I hope so.
Thank you for trusting the marketplace to fix the changes. I'm glad to see that. Didn't I see recently where Bing, I've been using Bing for a long time since Google has been messing around so much. Didn't I see where Bing was bought by Microsoft or something?
Bing is big,
They've been owned by Microsoft for a long time.
Yeah.
They created it, because there's a different icon there with the Bing, okay.
You need to use DuckDuckGo, he's right.
Yeah, I need to switch to that, that's a good idea.
And they're already
The
well.
electronic user agreement that everybody doesn't read and signs off on, which gives away your mother and your brother and your half-sister to slavery to them.
I have a brother I would give away.
Yeah, well, we all do. So what about looking at that agreement and making them simplify it and have actually a few check marks that we either agree or not agree, or eliminate a bulk of this, because that's where they get their legal authority to do all this.
Okay, so remember, you're talking to a conservative, and I don't want to go to a private company and say, your consent agreement is going to look like this.
But like the Constitution, like laws, they have to be clear, concise, and understandable.
Right.
You
and
don't tell me they're clear and understandable.
No, they're not, and
Yeah.
I haven't read page 23 where it says they can keep
Right.
my data and sell it to an advertiser. I haven't read that.
Right.
And I doubt many people do, they just want to move on, and so they click on the box and move
Well,
on.
do, right.
But what I do believe is, if we have 5 Googles, there will be one that will give you the option of, do you want us to sell this? Do you want us to,
Well, that's right.
and give you a half a page set of options. If we have one Google, they're gonna laugh at government. We'll get back to you on the new consent agreement that we're gonna come up with. But again, it's having these options in the marketplace.
You know, years ago, there was a piece of software that got released, because I had it for a while, and of course it disappeared, which would actually go in and analyze those and pop up so you could see where some of these conflicts were. But that was quickly killed. I'm not surprised that it doesn't exist.
No, I tell you what, it was merged.
Yeah,
They bought it,
yeah, done.
right on the shelf.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm going to see if there are any other questions back there before we go for round 2. Yes, sir.
I blame some of this on our educational system, where we're taught that free is free. It's not free. When you sign up with Google, they're not in business to provide a free service. They're there to make money.
Right.
And you're giving up something, so there is a line somewhere that says we can take your information and do this. People need to know that free is not free. There's a cost to everything, and I just think that our educational system is just not teaching. They're not teaching the free enterprise system in the schools.
I
At
agree
all.
with you.
I didn't get it in the 50s and 60s. I don't think they're getting it at all today. They don't have a clue.
So I agree with you. Our education system needs to change. The other thing that folks need to really understand about this is the Sherman Act, which is the famous first monopoly that was anti-monopoly antitrust law that was written in 1888. The light bulb hadn't been invented yet. The Clayton Act was written in 1913. So you've got law, and the Clayton Act deals with mergers, and the Sherman Act deals with monopolies. So that you had the Rockefellers and the others that had monopolies in oil and gas and railroads and banks and other things. But those laws, nobody ever envisioned the ability to go to Amazon, click, and get something delivered to your door the next day or the day after. Nobody ever envisioned that when they were writing these laws. And the electronic marketplace, the digital world, is something that we need to just update these laws to make sure we have competition. I got to tell you, I started this, we did an 18-month investigation. I started this as a free market person. I went into that investigation and said, the market will take care of this. We can't have government, picking winners and losers and going through this process. I came out of it saying, these companies, by the way, guess how many countries in the world have a gross national product, not a tax revenue, but a gross national product that exceeds the revenue, not the net worth, market cap, but the revenue of these 4 companies. How many countries? 188 countries in the world. Guess how many countries? 16. 16. They would be the 17th, largest, and they can destroy countries in this world. We've let these companies get so powerful that it's just unbelievable. Facebook today won a court case on antitrust, and their stock price went up, and they are now a $1 trillion+ company to match Apple. And Apple's also a $1 trillion+ market cap company. So they're just huge companies.